every time you grow by that multiplier, the answer that is the right thing, the best thing to do, changes.
As they say, that's a problem you hope you eventually have.
Yeah, happy problem. Happy problem is the thing where people shove money at you and you're trying to figure out how to serve them.
So if I understand it, BoltDB would be good for like other services. So DNS, LDAP.
Yeah. So
it'd be just straight up replacement for Memcache type class type thing.
Memcache is something a little bit different. Straight up replacement for something like Berkeley database, if you know that. Straight up replacement for a SQLite where you don't do any joins, you don't have any foreign keys, any of that sort of stuff. So for example, a bunch of DNS servers have switched to storing their zone files, like the compiled zone files, when they parse the ASCII thing and write it into something that's quick to query. A bunch of those have actually changed to LMDB because they're C projects, not Go projects. Similarly, LMDB was actually created for the OpenLDAP project. So it's completely a read-heavy query thingy. Postfix, the mail server, can store like aliases and stuff in LMDB databases. And once again, they're C programs, so they go with LMDB. But if you're running a Go program, you might as well use Bolt. Now, Bolt is not what I would call production ready, but hey.
Who created it? Is that your?
It's Ben Johnson. So, this guy.
Okay.
Ben B. Johnson on Twitter.
Does he have a specific use case for it?
He's writing some sort of analytics time series, something. But yeah, if you go into the Bolt repo and click one of the comments, like practically all of them are by Ben. So you can dig through his GitHub.
I'm pretty sure I've used one of these packages before for something.
He wrote the first Raft thing for Go. That's a typical thing where people recognize him from.
What were the read performance numbers again? I was thinking we were doing like a database lookup for DNS query or something. But,
Yeah.
I guess that is a perfectly reasonable use case here.
It's literally a B-tree descend for fully in-memory data. It's lightning fast.
Oh, that makes sense.
What if you did the mega JSON?
Yeah, he wrote MegaJSON, yes. MegaJSON is a JSON encoder decoder for Go that's like so much faster than the standard library one, but it's faster because it's based on code generation. So it knows the data type and it is exactly customized for it. It's also a little bit more limited in what data types it supports, but blazing fast.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, how does it deal with subdocuments?
I think it can do like structs within structs and do it right. It's just like, don't try to get like funny kinds of faults, and it just doesn't have all the data types in it because he didn't need them. I think he wrote it for the analytics thing, so he needed the stuff that he needed for his like time series metrics. So he wrote exactly that much. So that's a scan, the 32 million. So it's walking through the database one at a time. But the get random is pretty much your use case. So 1 million requests a second without any tuning on a desktop PC.
Okay.
On a single process. Like you could run several of these now again. Like you just have a copy of the data.
That's almost enough to handle all of my personal blog hits.
Yeah, my personal blog hits are like 1.3 without the multiply, just the 1.3.
You got a third of a view on your blog?
One of the things we talked about doing, which I don't know if there's interest or if anybody came prepared to do it, is if anybody wanted feedback on their Go code, like if you're like actually working independently and you're like stuck or not sure that you were doing something correctly, wasn't even sure if it was really feasible, but if anybody is looking for feedback,
I have one question about the Go language in general. I played around with it, I have an interest in it, but one of the issues that I have with it is just the language. I guess it's like this by design. It just seems to be very limiting in its what it does as a language. I'm just wondering, do you think that's ever going to limit it? Because I mean, there's other languages like Scala in a sense that's just this really big, complicated things, but at the same time, people like that because there's so many different things you can do with it. When you look at Go, it's just like, okay, it's a language that does a specific thing, and I just remember reading that it was designed like that for a specific, because they wanted it to be simple and clean and everything else, but besides the concurrency and obviously the speed.
What use cases do you have in mind?
Well, in part, I mean, I developed an interest in functional languages, and I've been playing around with, Scala and like Clojure and just other languages. And I mean, Go is interesting for a lot of different reasons. But then I look at it and I'm just saying, when you go from like Clojure or Scala, that just has all this stuff with it that you could just do all these different things with it, and then you look at Go that just has nothing in certain ways. It's like, is Go just such a specialized type of technology or language that is really going to just, it's just really just focusing on a specific use case, or is it just I guess the language itself maybe just isn't really concerned with having those types of things just because it's just the nature of the language.
Honestly, Go is intentionally boring.
Okay.
That's like one of the best things you can say about it.
Okay.
Because your challenges should be your application of your language.
Okay.
So the more time you spend fiddling with your programming language, the less you're actually like doing something real.
Yeah.
And that is something that kind of gets lost on some of the programming languages, and they end up like fiddling more with the language. And sometimes it's the point is to fiddle with the language.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of research projects that create programming languages as part of their research. And Haskell is a really good example of a language that is like really good in like the way they've thought it out, but it's just not practical. It's not that sort of. Go is like intentionally what I would say a working man's language, and it is like I would say it's proud of that heritage. It is literally like you can think of it as the next C. Now, C is not a fancy language.
Yeah.
Go tries to fix all the annoying things, all the ugly things, all the problematic, like memory corruption, that sort of stuff. Go tries to fix all of those problems, but it is like the value system of C, like what is good, what is bad, is completely like carried over into Go.
Well, it's also solving Google's problem.
Okay.
So you've got Google's problem is they've got thousands of coders working on the same code base, and in the languages that I was only there through 2009, so I didn't get to see Go introduced. But the languages that Google was using, there was a really strict guideline on what language features you were allowed to use.
Okay.
And essentially, the way that they solved the thousands of people working on the code thing is there was a definition of basically how you were going to write the code, such that anybody writing the code would write it exactly the same way. There was exactly one way to get the job done. Which meant that anybody could jump into any code anywhere, and it would make changes to it, and it would not. You wouldn't be jumping into somebody else's code going, "What the hell is this?" Like
Scala. That's a big issue. I know
the one like the language that I'm familiar with that this is a problem is Perl. Like there are a million different ways to express the same thing in Perl, and it's essentially a write-only language. That even if your own tastes change over time, you can go back and be like, "What the hell is this?" And that is not a problem that Google can afford to have. And this is Google's solution to that, which is embody a lot of the values they've placed in their own programmers in their own languages for their own code base. See if they can solve all of that and wrap it into an interesting language. So if you're not Google trying to solve Google-like problems with lots of coders, you want to play around with interesting language features. It might not be the right language for you, but I think for here, good. Like it's actually kind of a neat having stuff like GoFunct decide for you how the code is formatted.
Right.
There's not like, we never spend any time arguing over which line the brace belongs on. There's no question about it.
Well, that's an interesting point, actually. I hadn't thought about that.
I have a bunch of people who are into like machine learning, friends that are into machine learning and scientific computing and statistics, and honestly, I would not recommend Go to them, just because it does not have the sort of syntactic flexibility that something like Python has.
Right.
So in Python, you can make the matrix, or whatever your data type is, look like it's part of the language. In Go, you just fundamentally can't, and that's, in some ways, it's the flip side of the coin is positive also. When you see a plus, you know what it means.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, it's not meant to solve all the problems, it's meant to solve a critical mass of things that are really relevant. And honestly, things like, there's a bunch of people who would rather have a dynamically typed language. That's fine. That's, for some users, that makes more sense. And like, I would not recommend Go to a marketing agency that does like client projects where you need to get something done in a month.
Right.
I just wouldn't recommend Go to them. I mean, sure, if they have long-lasting value that they carry from one project to another, like a back-end thing, sure, that could be Go. But the thing that they scrap and rewrite based on a boilerplate thing, that's just, Go is not the right match for everything, and that's okay. Like, it doesn't have to be.
Mongo's actually using it for the backup service. And it was interesting, I think they originally wrote it in Java, and they were explaining actually why Go is the right use case, and they actually said that one of the needs of it was that it had to sit on unknown servers, and they didn't know what was actually going to be on there. And they said the problem is Java, it's questionable and stuff like that, so they ended up actually using Go, which I thought was actually kind of an intriguing reason to use it, because it's such a specialty, but it seems to work for them.
Here's a good argument why JVM is horrible.
Well, I'm not questioning that.
No, I'm just saying, like, Go is explicitly built as a response to this world. This is all the -XX options for the JVM.
And Google uses a lot of Java.
I don't even know what -XX really means in this context, but like. It just keeps going on. And they have explicitly said that Go will never be this tunable. It will be one size is the right thing kind of a thing. If they can't make it good, they won't make it good. Like literally, like on that level of like, it has to be something that just works in a way that is not a question of like, oh, but you should have tuned that. Like that's a cop-out.
Yeah.
You should never tell somebody that their server, like the process is running badly because they forgot to tune some memory amount. Like that's like, why didn't it tune it itself or not do it in a way that was just that bad? So like Go is embracing simplicity in ways that many other languages just aren't. Like JVM is, my previous day job, the compilation took more than 40 minutes. That's just not a simple environment to work in. And Go is like the response to that. So if it means that it doesn't apply to a problem, that's fine.
Right. Which I guess is common anyway. A lot of companies use like 20 different languages, so.
So I'm trying to show this. So I've been fiddling with Fuse a lot. And one of the things I wrote, actually while at GopherCon, was a Fuse file system that mounts a Bolt database. So all the buckets and keys and values, well, that's directories, files, and file contents. And you can go in and you can make there a bucket and you can cat a key and outcomes data. So that's a good way to kind of explore. For me, it's like I wrote a bug. Let's see what I did to my database, kind of a thing. And then I realized that, I put a bucket on the top level when it was meant to be a sub-bucket or something else. But just being able to go in and run like a tree or a find is just intuitive to me. I'm a command line person.
And I think that would generally be one of the things that I would, it's a little too low level for
there's no tools for exploration. So if I'm trying to figure out what the hell is going on, like I need something. So
I wrote that.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly for that. Yeah, because it is an engine, not a full solution. There is no like SQL shell you can jump into and do a select star from blah blah blah. That doesn't exist in Bolt. So you have either command line tools that do queries or something like this, where you mount it as a file system and go explore.
Well, and this is neat because you can, if you really need to do find or grep, to just look for something as a one-off. The tools are already there. So
Yeah.
that's cool.
And also, if you want to learn how to write a Fuse file system, this repository, it's let's go off full screen. So it's on GitHub. The Basil project is named Bazillion on GitHub because of namespace stealing things, people registering things they don't use. So that was the first thing that was available. So there's a thing called Bolt Mount as a repo. If you look at the history, it's 16 commits now, and you can literally start reading it from like the oldest one first. And it should make sense on every step of the way, and that will teach you how to make your own Fuse file system in Go. So like, we added a reader, list the contents of a directory, and that's tests. But if we ignore the tests, there's a concept of a directory that has an attribute. Like it's fairly, I don't know, for me it's readable, but I've been playing with that for a year now. Anyway, fun things. I wrote that while at GopherCon, and GopherCon was an interesting conference. I figured I should kind of talk about it a little. You weren't there. Was anyone else at GopherCon? You guys were, but nobody else. Okay. So it was a 2-day conference with a third hack day, which was like no scheduled program originally. They added lightning talks that went from like 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and Google started doing like their cloud thing as they talked about the cloud thing and helped people write clients for it, like cloud storage, compute engine, that sort of stuff. But the two days of actual conference had a lot of good talks, and they are, all of this stuff is, the slides are either public or getting to be public. All of it was videoed, and some of the talks were really good. So actually that's about Bolt, and that's Ben. But for example, all the core Go people, their talks were kind of informative in many ways. They just about all of them spoke about either the history of the Go project or their own personal history of learning Go. So if you want to have that sort of an inside view, there was a lot of interesting stuff. I think a lot of people like this talk, Go for sysadmins. I actually myself missed it. I'm going to watch it on video. The videos are going to get uploaded any day now. Probably you can follow GopherCon on Twitter to see when they are published. And Ben's talk was pretty good. People like this. It was more of a sort of managerial level talk. Yeah, it was more about like the cost benefit of switching to Go. NSQ is a really interesting project, and Camly Store was kind of interesting. That's one of the Go developers talking about what's coming up, and this talk is definitely something I would recommend to everyone. So this is SoundCloud's best practices for how to write Go, and I wouldn't actually call them even SoundClouds. They are generally agreed upon to be the best practices, and they just wrote it down nicely. So that would be a thing, and his slides are actually, and he wrote an article based on it, so like his blog has a full post about it. Really, if you're like looking for, like you're not sure how to make Go be, how should I put it? A lot of people attribute a lot of amazing things to Go. If you feel like you're not quite there, this might get you there. This is how you use Go in a way that will get you those benefits. And this supposedly was really good, like entertaining. I missed the talk myself. Yeah.
Gooba.
Yeah, Gobo.
They're actually based in Los Angeles. For my office's conference room as a meetup place for them, so they might come up with something soon.
Cool. I guess we're done. People have questions or other things they'd like to discuss? Okay, thank you, and thank you very much for helping with the audiovisual. Really appreciate it. Thanks,
Welcome.
Steve, for giving